I'm Jack Thompson, and I still remember the exact second everything changed in my house. My son-in-law grabbed my daughter Emily's wrist so hard that her fingers lost all color. His face moved close to hers, his jaw tight with anger. "Say one more thing," he hissed, "and you'll regret it." Those words hit my dining room like a gunshot. The plates on the table were still warm. My wife, Sarah, stood frozen near the kitchen counter. Emily tried to pull away without making a scene, but I saw it in her eyes. Fear. Real fear. And the worst part? This wasn't the first time. Mike released her wrist, forced a fake smile onto his face, then sat back down like nothing had happened. He picked up his drink and acted normal. But nothing was normal anymore. I looked at Emily carefully. She lowered her sleeve fast, trying to hide the red marks already forming around her skin. That was the moment I made my decision. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right then. Mike kept talking through dinner, laughing too loudly, pretending to be the perfect husband. But I barely heard a word coming out of his mouth. My mind was somewhere else. Somewhere I promised myself I would never return to again. About 20 minutes later, Mike stormed outside after Emily answered one of his questions the wrong way. The front door slammed hard enough to shake the picture frames. Sarah immediately rushed toward Emily. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Emily nodded too quickly. "I'm fine, Mom." "Really?" But she wasn't. A father knows. I quietly stood from the table and walked toward the garage without saying a word. My heartbeat felt heavy inside my chest. Hidden behind an old toolbox underneath a shelf sat something I hadn't touched in almost 10 years. A small black burner phone. Dust covered the screen. I stared at it for several seconds before turning it on. One number still remained saved. Just one. I typed slowly. "Family emergency. Need protection tonight." No names. No details. I hit send. Then I deleted the message immediately. For a few seconds, I just stood there in the dark garage, listening to my own breathing. Because the second that message went through, there was no turning back. Mike thought he controlled my family. He had no idea what I had just started. Back inside the house, Sarah was cleaning dishes in silence. Emily sat at the table, staring into space. I forced myself to sound calm. "Everything all right in here?" Sarah looked at me carefully. "Jack, something feels wrong." I kissed her forehead gently. "I'll handle it." She searched my eyes like she wanted answers, but she didn't push further. That made it worse somehow, because I was already hiding things from the people I loved most. Exactly 35 minutes later, 3 soft knocks came from the back door. Not loud, not rushed, just controlled, precise. I opened the door carefully. A tall man stood outside wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over his face. Victor Kane. 10 years older than the last time I saw him. 10 years since I walked away from that life. He stepped inside without saying hello, without asking questions. We moved straight to the basement, the same basement where Emily used to play with dolls as a little girl. Now it felt like a war room. Victor stood near the water heater while I explained everything in a low voice. The bruises, the gambling, the screaming, the control, the threats. And finally what happened at my dinner table. Victor listened without interrupting once, but the colder his face became, the more nervous I felt. When I finished speaking, he folded his arms. "You want him scared," he said quietly. I looked him straight in the eyes. "I want him away from my daughter forever." Victor nodded once. "Clean and invisible." "Yes. No police. No police." He stayed silent for several seconds. Then he finally spoke again. "All right, but after this, we disappear again. Understand?" I nodded. We spent the next hour planning every detail carefully. No phone calls. No cameras. No direct threats tied to me. Nothing traceable. When we finished, Victor walked upstairs first and slipped out the back door into the darkness like he had never been there. I waited another 5 minutes before going upstairs myself. Sarah looked up from the couch. "You were checking the furnace that long?" "Yeah," I answered calmly, but my hands were shaking. That night I barely slept. Every small sound outside made my stomach tighten. At 4:12 a.m., my old phone vibrated once beside the sink. One message. Done. Nothing else. Victor's people had already moved. The next morning, Mike walked into my house, acting like the king of the world. Big smile, coffee cup in hand. Morning, everybody. He kissed Emily on the cheek, while she stiffened slightly. But something about him had changed. He kept checking his phone every few minutes, kept glancing toward the windows, kept looking over his shoulder. He could feel it already. Pressure, fear, and he didn't even know where it was coming from. At exactly 9 o'clock that morning, Mike arrived at his office downtown. Sitting in the middle of his desk waited a plain white envelope with no name written on it. No fingerprints, no stamp, no clue how it got there. Inside were photographs. Photos of private gambling rooms. Photos of unpaid debt records. Photos of hidden bank accounts he never told Emily about. And underneath them all sat one typed sentence. Touch her again, and your world disappears quietly. No signature. No explanation. Nothing else. Victor later told me Mike nearly fainted when he opened it. Good. That entire day Mike acted nervous. Emily noticed too. Dad, she whispered while Sarah wasn't listening. Something's wrong with him. I kept my expression blank. Maybe he's finally scared of his own mistakes. But inside I knew this was only the beginning. That evening Sarah cornered me in the laundry room. Jack, she whispered urgently. Tell me what's happening. I shook my head slowly. The less you know, the safer you are. Her face tightened immediately. Safer from what? I stepped closer. Trust me. She stared at me for a long moment before finally nodding. But I hated lying to her. Sarah had spent 32 years standing beside me through every hard moment in life. And now I was shutting her out. Around 7:30 that night my phone rang from a block number. I answered silently. Mike's breathing filled the line. You did something, he muttered. I said nothing. You hear me? Somebody's messing with me. Still silence. Then he whispered something that told me the message worked. I can feel people watching me. I hung up. Immediately afterward another text arrived from Victor. He's rattled. Delete after reading. I erased it instantly. Outside, rain started falling softly against the windows. I sat in darkness inside the living room while Sarah and Emily slept upstairs. Every car passing the house made my muscles tighten. Then around midnight headlights slowed outside our home. Mike's truck. He crawled past the house slowly, watching, studying, trying to figure out who was destroying his life piece by piece. 2 blocks away, Victor's men sat in an unmarked car, keeping eyes on everything. Invisible, untouchable. Mike finally drove away after several minutes. But I knew he was becoming desperate, and desperate men become dangerous. The next afternoon, Emily quietly approached me while Sarah was grocery shopping. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes. Dad, she whispered, I need to show you something. She slowly rolled up her sleeve. A deep purple bruise covered her arm. My stomach turned instantly. How long? I asked carefully. She looked down. A while. Rage hit me so hard I had to grip the kitchen counter. He's losing money gambling, she admitted quietly. When things go bad, he takes it out on me. I closed my eyes for 1 second. 1 second was all it took for old memories to come flooding back. The old life. The things I used to do. The things I promised never to become again. When I opened my eyes, my voice stayed calm. Listen carefully, I said. Tomorrow stay close to this house. Don't go anywhere alone. Her face filled with confusion. Dad, what are you doing? I forced a small smile. Protecting my daughter. That night Victor returned again through the back door. No sound. No wasted movement. We met in the basement once more. He placed a folded paper on top of the washing machine. Mike owes serious people money, he explained. We pushed one of his creditors tonight. How hard? Victor looked at me carefully. Hard enough that Mike's running out of options. I stared down at the paper. Inside were copies of debt amounts that made my chest tighten. Mike owed far more than Emily knew. Victor lit a cigarette near the basement window. After tomorrow, he said quietly. This ends one way or another. I nodded slowly. No blood. Victor exhaled smoke. That depends on Mike. Before leaving, he grabbed my shoulder. You did the right thing calling me. I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. The next evening things exploded. Right after sunset, headlights flooded our driveway. A truck stopped hard outside the house. Then another. Mike jumped out first. Two rough-looking men climbed out behind him. My pulse instantly spiked. Sarah gasped from the kitchen window. "Oh my God." Mike stormed toward the front door, screaming my name. "Jack!" The pounding started immediately. Violent. Angry. Emily began shaking beside the stairs. I grabbed the baseball bat hidden beside the hallway closet, but stayed away from the windows. "Open this damn door." Mike shouted. The two men behind him looked furious. One kept scanning the neighborhood nervously. Mike slammed his fist against the door again. "You think you can ruin me?" Sarah whispered in panic. "Jack, call the police." But before I could answer, sirens. Far away at first, then getting closer fast. Blue and red lights reflected faintly down the street. Victor's final move. The two men instantly panicked. "Mike, we gotta go." Mike cursed loudly. He pointed toward the house one final time. "This isn't over." Then all three jumped into the truck and sped away before the police even reached the street. The sirens eventually passed without stopping. Just enough pressure. Just enough fear. Perfectly timed. Emily collapsed into tears immediately. Sarah wrapped her arms around her tightly. I stood near the dark hallway gripping the baseball bat while my heartbeat slammed inside my chest. "It's almost over," I said quietly. But honestly, I wasn't fully sure. That night nobody slept. Every creak in the house sounded dangerous. Every shadow near the windows looked wrong. At 11:47 p.m., soft knocks came again at the back door. I moved carefully through the kitchen, expecting Victor. Instead, a woman slipped inside quickly. Rachel, Mike's half-sister. She looked exhausted and scared. "He called me last night," she whispered immediately. "Completely broken." Sarah looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Rachel swallowed hard. "Mike thinks powerful people are after him." I stayed silent. Rachel continued speaking. "He's leaving tomorrow morning. Rehab center out of state." Emily stared at her in shock. "He already signed divorce papers," Rachel added softly. Then she handed Emily a sealed envelope. Emily opened it with shaking hands. Inside sat a handwritten letter from Mike. An apology. A real one. Not excuses. Not lies. Fear had finally cracked him open. The letter admitted everything. The gambling. The drinking. The abuse. The anger. And most importantly, the fear. Fear of invisible people who somehow knew every secret he ever hid. Emily cried quietly while Sarah held her close. I stepped outside into the garage alone for some air. My old burner phone vibrated one last time. Debt cleared. He's gone. Stay safe, brother. Victor. The final message. I stared at the screen for several long seconds. Then I deleted it forever. After that, I dropped the burner phone onto the concrete floor and crushed it beneath my boot. Once. Twice. Again. Until nothing worked anymore. Every trace gone. Every secret buried. Forever. Mike left town the following week. No calls. No threats. Nothing. The silence that followed felt strange at first. Like the house itself didn't trust peace anymore. But slowly things changed. Emily started smiling again. Real smiles. Not forced ones. Sarah finally relaxed enough to sleep through the night. And for the first time in months, our family dinner table stopped feeling like a battlefield. 6 months later, we all sat together eating homemade lasagna while laughing over some stupid television commercial. Emily looked lighter. Free. Like someone finally removed a weight from her shoulders. Sarah reached under the table and squeezed my hand gently. Then she leaned close and whispered something I'll never forget. "Whatever you hid from me that week, thank you." I looked at her quietly and said nothing, because some truths protect people better when they stay buried. I never told Emily about Victor. Never explained the burner phone. Never talked about the old life I escaped 10 years earlier. And I never will. All they know is this. The fear stopped. Mike disappeared. And our family survived. Sometimes protecting the people you love means stepping into darkness for a little while. Sometimes fathers carry secrets so their children don't have to carry pain. And sometimes, one text message can change everything. If this story hit you hard, comment Hidden Real Dad below. Tell me honestly, how far would you go to protect your family? Share this story with someone who believes real fathers never stop fighting for the people they love. And remember this, real protection doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it happens quietly, in shadows, behind locked doors, with secrets nobody will ever know.